Okay. Um, well, football season's pretty much over. I know basketball's starting, wrestling and whatnot, coming on the winter months. Um, but there's always time to prepare for throwing. Okay. Um, so basically, what I want to do is start from the beginning. Um, for a lot of you that are just now starting out throwing or are novice throwers, um, I'm just going to cover everything from start to finish. For the grunt work page, a lot of the stuff I covered when I was on the Coach Lots throwing circles, but I'm going to transition everything over. So um, we'll start from the basics. So today, what I want to talk about is choosing the right discus. Shot put's not as big a deal. They make different size shot puts out of like out brass is smaller than a cast iron. So if you got smaller hands or whatever, I mean, those will work good for you. Um, so shot put's not as big a deal. Discus, however, is. If you're just starting out throwing, never thrown before, you're going to throw one of these. Okay, rubber discus. Um, Not really. It's just center weighted. Okay, most of the weight's in the center of it. Um, Reason being is it's easier to release correctly. It's more forgiving um, than it would be if it's like a high spin. This is a high spin discus. I think this one's a 72% rim weight, which means that the metal part is the rim. That's where most 72% of the weight's at. The rest of it's made up with the fiberglass and the bolt in the middle. These are harder to throw. They're harder to control. Um, so if you just start out and you grab one of those, it's gonna it's gonna wobble. So choosing the right implement. I know everyone wants to go out and look cool while they're throwing. So I've seen it last year, big time. $250 graphite brass ring discus looks awesome, except for when you throw it, and every time you throw it, it goes out of bounds because it's a high spin discus. Okay, high spin discus wants to come out of your hand early. It wants to spin, so it's going to come out early. The lower rim weight, the discus, the longer it's going to want to stay in your hand, so you can put more power on it, more spin on it. The higher spin, like I said, they want to spin, but you still got to be able to put the right velocity and everything on it. So I guess you got to kind of know how these work. It's basically an airfoil. Well, it is an airfoil. Okay, so when you throw it and it's spinning, okay, if you throw it right and you put the right velocity on your spin, basically the air underneath moves faster than it does on top, so it's going to want to climb. Okay, so you got to get the right angle and everything on it. But they kind of break it down as far as distance with the discus, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, it does, but it doesn't, because I mean, you want your disc, like this one is only going to spin for 100 foot, 120 foot. Okay, so if I'm throwing 140, this one's going to stop spinning at 120 and it's just going to drop out of the air. Okay, once they stop spinning, they're no longer creating lift, so they'll just drop out. So you want to make sure you got the right discus. I actually watched a kid last year that was should have been throwing 130s, and he was throwing a cruddy rubber discus, and it just go out to about 115 and drop. Like I said, these ones are center weighted, and then you'll have, this is also center weight, but this is a low spin. This is just a center weighted discus. And they'll run, your center weighted and your low spin discs will run like 40% rim weight to upper 60s. And then as you go center weighted low spin, and then medium spin, high spin, and very high spin. Your very high spins can go up to 92% rim weight. Those are for like 230-foot throwers. They kind of go by a little bit of a distance as far as how far the discus will fly, like the max footage. Like I said, your rubber ones, your practice discs, and your low spins are normally filled 100 to 120, something like that. And then from 120 to 150, you'll have your medium. 150 to 180, say, your high spin, and then 180 on. It's a very high spin disc. If you get to where you're throwing this and it's dropping out, or you can get it to, and it spins for say 90% of the distance of your throw, so you're throwing 100 foot and you can see it spinning for 90, you could probably go up to a low spin or center weighted wood, and then of course go on from there. Once you get these flying right, then you can move up to like a medium spin or a high spin, like these ones. So you have your rubber practice discs, you have your wooden with the steel ring, these, you have fiberglass, carbon fiber, aluminum, the brass rings, a bunch of different metals, different alloys, different materials. It just kind of depends on what you prefer. So you'll mess with a bunch of them. That's like, this is 1.6, which is high school, and this is 1.6, which is high school. Okay, but as you can see, one of them's a larger diameter than the other, but also the rim on this one is a lot thicker than the rim on this one. So it just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with. Whatever you can get the best flight out of, whatever you can get the best release out of. But just make sure when you're starting out that you're starting out with a rubber discus or one of the low spin wooden, center weighted wooden discs. It's not going to help you at all to throw a fancy discus. And that even goes, if you're throwing, 180 feet, don't throw a wooden discus. Because you know that the wooden discs are only, good for 150 to 150 feet. Because they will stop spinning. The way that works is since all the weight is in the middle, it's easier to get it to spin, but it doesn't spin as fast. And then the ones that are weighted outside spin faster, but it's harder to get them spinning and to put enough velocity on it and torque on it to keep it spinning through your whole throw. But like I said, when you start with a rubber one and then work your way up from there. Coaches hopefully You have a variation, you know, an assortment of discus for your athletes, because you may end up with a kid that you know catches on real quick and is, you know, fronting 120 feet and needs to get away from a rubber discus. That's about it for choosing your implement. And a couple things too. Like on windy days and stuff, if you're throwing a high spin and it's a crosswind, it's gonna tip early, so you might want to back down to a lower spin. If it's a headwind, you can actually go up because these are more stable in a headwind. It's just some little tricks. The brass, I like the brass ones because it's tackier. Like you get a better grip on it, but it's also a softer metal. So if you have a tendency of throwing this thing out of the, you know, out to the right or left if you're left-handed or whatever, you're bound to bang a pole, and you know it's brass is softer metal, so you'll ding the heck out of it. Fiberglass is good for a while. As you can see, this one, where's it at? Oh, right here. It's got a nice big crack in it. I think it was a cheap one though. The wooden ones are good. If you get a decent one, Nelco's makes a good wooden discus. I like Nelco. Gill's good. Polonic. Oh, there's a whole bunch of different ones out there. Stackhouse. That's what this is. This is a good one. And like I said, for your shot put, it just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with. I started out with a cast iron when I was in high school. I throw a cast iron one now, and it's huge. It's like throwing a bowling ball. I started out with a cast iron one in high school, and then I went down to a spun steel, which is kind of nice because it has like ribs, you know, for a little easier to grip. And then that one disappeared. I don't know where it went. And I ended up throwing a brass, which was okay. I didn't like it as well as I did the steel ones, but like I said, hand size. You want to make sure that you can get your entire hand behind the shot put, because otherwise you're gonna stretch your fingers and that hurts. Other than that, I'll put up some videos on grip, release, drills for working your releases, and then we'll go into, from there we'll go into power position and move on from that. So keep throwing. See ya.